Okay, so hello everyone, very good evening. I welcome you all at India's most comprehensive preparation platform for all competitive exams, that is BYJU'S Exam Prep. So guys, I welcome you all at this summer special classes of database management system. Today, we are going to understand that why do we actually need database management system? Don't we have any other mechanism to manage the database? And if we have, then what are the limitations and why do we actually need database management system? So that's what we are going to learn in this particular session. So before we proceed, there's a brief introduction of myself. My name is Vishal Rawatiya, 10 plus years of teaching experience, achievements, and the area of expertise. Now, moving with ahead. So there's an announcement that the BYJU'S exam prep team is soon going to launch a BYJU'S Premier League. In that particular league, we will come out with these sessions, which will be YouTube plus app-based session. In those sessions, we will have the concept-related things on the YouTube, and then we will practice the questions on the application. So that accessing of the application will be free, completely free. You just need to register and you can participate in the quizzes or any other type of sessions which are being conducted by the respective mentors or faculties. So one more announcement, Rakesh Talreja sir is going to take a workshop on 20th June at 7:30 p.m. In that particular workshop, Rakesh sir is going to discuss that how you can ace GATE in 8 months. So it will be a perfect time. 8 months are more than sufficient to crack the GATE exam. If you need any guidance, then do attend this workshop, participate in this workshop. This workshop will be conducted on the app again. So do register for the app and participate in the workshop. It's absolutely free. Okay, so let's move ahead with the session. So the very simple thing when we ask is, sir, what is database? We are going to talk about database management system, but what actually this database is? So database is actually nothing but the collection of organized data. So it's organized. So let's see, we can have various information about a student, ID of the student, name of the student, branch of the student or marks of that particular student, but all that information is structured and organized, then we call it a database. Otherwise we will call it a raw data. So database is created after processing and analyzing the raw data. So initially what you will gather is the raw data, and from that raw data you will try to construct a database. So it is nothing but the collection of organized data that is structured and stored electronically on a computer system. So that's computer system, maybe in the hard disk or maybe in your pen drive, wherever, right? So let's move ahead. So database is okay. That now we understand what is database. So we have a structured and organized data somewhere stored. That's my database. Then what do I mean by database management system? So database management system is actually nothing but a software, right? So it actually behaves as an interface between user and the database. So database is stored in the hard disk. So let's try to understand. For the simplicity, we'll assume that all my data or the database is actually stored in the hard disk, right? And you are a user which are working on the system with the APIs, right? So you are working with the help of an application. So what happens that how do you access that data which is stored in the hard disk? So for that purpose, database management system will eventually provide you an interface. So what's the database management system? It acts as an interface between user and the database which is stored in the hard disk actually, right? Now, it's a software. And what's the primary task of the database management system? So if anybody asks you that what's the objective of the data? So you have a data, you have created the database. Out of the data, you have stored it. What's the use of the database if you cannot use the database as and when required? So the idea is you may want to modify the database with the time, or you may want to retrieve some useful information from the database as and when required by you. Right? So primary task of the database is nothing but the manage and access the database in efficient manner. So the term which is important here is efficient. That you want to manage and access the database, but you want to do the task in such a way that it is efficient. Let's assume a terabyte of data which is available in the form of text file, and there are thousands of records corresponding to name Vishal Rautia in that file, and somebody asks you to search for all those records in a file which is of terabyte, if you start doing it manually, you may spend years, right? So that's the idea. You actually want to do the same thing in the efficient manner, that the time which you require to retrieve the data from the database should be nominal. It should not be too high. Okay, sir, that's good enough that we have understood that what is database. We have understood the basic meaning of the database management system, right? Now let's think that, sir, why this database management system? Don't we have anything else using which we can manage the database present in the file and we can retrieve the data from that file, right? So for that, we actually have a concept of file system. So it's very old. So database management system is a new term in terms of computer engineering, but file system is an old term. So file system is there since the beginning of the operating concept of operating system, right? So file system is too old. So if the file system exists, so what is file system? So let's try to understand first that what is our file system. So file system is also nothing, but it is also a way of organizing the data, right? So what do you actually do? Let's assume that you have a file of student. So in the file of student, you are having the roll number of that student, name of that student, branch of that student, course, database, management system, discrete mathematics, whatever, and the marks of that particular course, etc. Various field may be there, right? So this is one file. This is one file. This is one file. File system will be used to manage this file. File system will be used for what purpose? To manage this file. Then you have course file. Similarly, you have result file, etc. So you may have multiple files. And the most important thing which you need to understand here is that all these files may be with respect to a same university. Let's assume that these are all the files with respect to same university. They are not from different places. And that's the important thing which you need to understand, that what makes the use of file system difficult. So, okay, so file system is used to organize the files in a storage medium. So that's nothing but your hard disk, that you want to manage your, organize your files in the hard disk. So file system is actually responsible for many other things as well, right? That what blocks of hard disk will be allocated to this particular file, what type of, in what order the blocks will be allocated to this file. Those will be sequential, or you will have the linked allocation of the block for the particular file. So those are all the things which are defined by the file system. And this file system will also help in the retrieval of the file whenever they are required. So what will you retrieve? Whenever you need, you will retrieve the file. So let's try to understand a basic difference. You are not interested in the file of the student. You are actually a student in the record of a particular student. If you want to access complete file, it's a different thing. But if you want to access the record of a particular student, then retrieval of the complete file will be of no use. Then even if you have retrieved the complete file, then also you would like to perform, you would like to do some processing in order to get the record of a particular student. Yes or no? So that all needs to be done, and in a while we will come to know that what is the problem with this thing, right? So let's move ahead. So these are the different data. Now what you need to understand is, when I say that these are the data of the same university, then you need to understand the roll number, name, branch, course and marks. These are the field of student file, right? So in the result also you are having roll number, name, branch. What is the name of the subject for which you are talking about, right? So in this course you may have the overall marks. Here you will have the individual marks. In this course you will have overall marks, and here you may have individual marks. Getting the idea? So it's a difference. So when I say course, it's course name. So let it be course or course name, right? So let's try to understand that the duplication of data is present in the file system. So you are having the information of all these students here, as well as the duplication of data here. Got the idea? So you are duplicating the data, means the storage space required will be more. The storage space required will be more in terms of file system, because you want all the information in a single file as well, right? Now the task will become difficult if the data is present in the different file and you want to access or you want to process the data in such a way that one information is from one particular file and another information is from another file, right? So you will require two files. So you will have roll number. So I have the information of roll number, or basically let's assume that I give you some other information. Let me add some other information as well. Okay. So let's see the maximum marks. If you look at the marks, then the marks column will be available in the result file, right? But the ID of the course will be available in the course file. So if somebody asks you that what will be the ID of the course in which the maximum marks are obtained by the student, right? So in that case, you can get the information of maximum marks here from the result file. You can get the maximum marks from the result file, but to get the information about the ID of that course, you will have to access the course file. Getting the complication, I mean, are you trying to understand the complication? That okay, the files are okay, but if we do not have a system which can manipulate these files on behalf of me, then my task will be easy. If there is someone who can do this task, that okay, when I give him the maximum marks, then he can actually search for the course ID corresponding to that maximum marks, then my task will be easier, right? But otherwise in the file system, you will have to do it yourself, right? You will have to write the procedures for that. You can do it manually, whatever you can, but there is no system working for you in order to do all this operation, right? And that's what is the benefit of the database management system, that it will provide you with the it will provide you with a, like you can say actually machine which will do all this tasks for you, right? So anyway, we'll come back to this particular slide again, but let's try to understand that if we already have our file system, then why do we need database management system or file system? Why do we need database management system or file system? So that's the main objective of the today's session, that we want to understand that what are the limitations of the file system which makes the task of management and accessing of the data difficult, and how does the database management system overcome those limitations of the file system. That's what we are going to understand in the today's session, that file system fails to manage the data. Yeah, one particular reason to study the database management system is useful when the database is too large. For a file of 1 page, you don't need any system. You can do it manually. You can do it manually faster than the system, right? So the database management system actually is useful when the database is too large, terabyte, etc. Right? Now, there are some limitations of the file system, and to overcome those limitations, we will eventually use the database management system. So let's try to understand those limitations first, then we will come back to the same topic. So first thing, some of the limitations of file system are, the very first, there are many more, but the logical limitations which will give you the intuition that we actually need the database management system are this 4. So let's try to understand complexity of accessing the data using file system. What's the complexity? So let's come onto a new slide. When I say complexity, so let's try to understand that I have this student file, as we discussed earlier. I have this student file, and then there are records of the students in this student file. Just a minute, please cooperate. See, there is no rocket science. You just need to listen to the story. You just need to understand that what's actually happening, and you will be able to visualize the need of database management system. I cannot simply say that a complexity of it's complex to access the data from the file system. So many of you will ask, sir, I know this, I have read this term in the book as well, but how? Right? So if you are a GATE aspirant, then, or basically if you are a good learner, you must focus on how and why rather than, okay, I know this fact. So facts are of no use. They may give you few marks in the exam. Anyway, we are going to learn the facts if we are going to learn the concept along with the facts, but concepts are more important, right? So let's assume that this is a student file and I ask you that, let's assume that this is the ID S1, S2, S3 and many records. Let's assume SX. So these are the IDs, or yes. And then there is a particular field after so many fields which is known as marks. Right. So there are multiple students, multiple marks. If I ask you one thing, and this is a file. This is a file. So let's say the extension is txt. It's a text file. Right. So if I ask you, retrieve SIDs of the students who scored more than 80 marks, what will you do? What will you do? Tell me. Right? If you want to solve this problem and it's a file, right? So one way of doing it that you can do it manually. Okay, sir. I'll go through the complete file and I'll give you the SIDs of the students who scored more than 80 marks. But I told you that this things will be visible when the file size is too large. Let's assume that this text file is of 500 GB. So there are lakhs of pages in this file. So what will you do? Manually will eventually be time consuming. So you are not going to do it. Obviously, if the database is too large, anyone who is going to do it manually needs to think again that whether he is a computer science student or not. Right? Now, what else can be done? You can write a program. Yes or no? You can write a program or procedure. What do you need to know to write the procedure? What you need to know to write the procedure? Sir, there are many things which you will have to know before you start writing this program or procedure to run this query. Now the idea is the creator of the database is somebody else. So the person who created this file, student.txt, is someone else and users may be anybody. Right? So the idea is the person who created this file actually knows in what order I have arranged the different information about the student in this file. That first I have mentioned ID, or first I have mentioned name, or first I have mentioned branch. So we don't know that in what order these things are available in this particular file. So you may say, sir, file is in front of me. No. So that's the problem. With the large database, there are also issues of security and privacy. Right? So you cannot provide all the information to all the users. So there are limited privileges available to the user, that somebody can read only, somebody can read as well as write, somebody can execute. So some files are maybe executable files. So the permission in the file system may be for execution as well. But the idea is, okay, so you may give the permission to read the content of the file, but the idea is there may be some information which you don't want to show to everybody. So let's see, if you talk about attendance, then attendance should be shown only to the faculties. The attendance column should not be available to all the students, right? Or that information can be available to the parents of the students, right? So there are different types of information in the student.txt file itself which you do not want to represent to every user, right? So that thing becomes a a problem when it comes to file system. So that's the idea. Then anyway, if you are not worried about security and privacy, then also you need to know the format of the file. You need to know the locations of different fields in the file. You need to know the size of each field. You need to know the size of each record. What's the problem? That you are actually looking for this particular. So to access this data, let's assume 90 is written here. To access that what value is written at that particular location, you need to access this memory location. Yes or no? And to access this memory location, you must know this memory address. And to know this memory address, you must know what is the starting address of the student file, how many bytes of fields are before this field marks, then what is the size of this record, then size of record plus the size of those fields before marks will give you the marks of the second student, and so on, right? So all this information should be needed before you write the procedure. So to write the procedure, what is needed? To write the procedure or program, you need to know the physical details of the file. Yes or no? To write a procedure, we need to know the physical details of file. How easy will it be? How easy will it be if it is a data, if it is happening on the database management system? Because there is a engine which can do all this processing for you if you simply tell him to do one thing. What? Select SID from a student where marks are greater than 80. So when you are writing this SQL query, do you need to know that where exactly student table is stored in the hard disk, where exactly what are the alignments of the field of this table student? Do you need to know all this thing? No sir, we don't need any information. All that thing is known to your engine or processing engine. You will just give him this query. You will just give this query to that particular engine. It will process the information and it will provide you the SIDs of the students who scored more than 80 marks. Right? So, any one of you who have ever executed an SQL query, did you ever need to know the physical detail of the file? No sir, you don't need to know the physical detail of the file. So, if you have to know the physical detail, then it becomes complicated. You don't need to know the physical detail. And how is it done? So the idea is, this thing is called, what do we call this? So this thing is called data abstraction and data independence. What do we call it? Data abstraction and data independence. So DBMS solve this problem, or DBMS provide data abstraction, that things will be represented to you in the simplest form. What form? That you will only know that there is a table with a name student and there are some fields like a student ID, a student name, marks, etc. So whatever the fields are in the relation student, those fields will be known to you. Only that much information is sufficient to execute a query or to write a query. So DBMS provide data abstraction and data independence. What do I mean by data independence? So data independence means if you change some information at one level, then you don't need to make the changes at other level. So let's try to understand. The creator or somebody who has written this file has created this file at particular location, or he has arranged the attributes in a particular manner. he has given the information to a particular user who has written the procedure to access the data. If the designer makes some changes in this particular file, then those changes has to be reflected to the user so that he can make modification in his procedure so that the correct output is received. Right or wrong? So that's the problem, that complexity of accessing the data using file system, because we need to know, it is complex to access the data using file system because we need to know the physical details of the file. Whereas in the database management system, it provides data abstraction and data independence. Therefore, you don't need to know the physical detail of the file. You just need to know the overview of the file or overview of the database, that what is the name of the relation and what are the different attributes of that relation. Clear? One thing should be clear at this point of time, that okay, file system has some limitations. So that's the first limitation. Second is data redundancy and inconsistency. Data redundancy and inconsistency. So let's try to understand one thing. So it's so that's simple, that duplication of data. What is redundancy? Duplication of data is redundancy. If you don't know, duplication of data is redundancy. When we talk about inconsistency, what does it mean? That the correct value should be present at all the places. When I say consistency, for consistency, correct value should be present at all the places. So consistency is correctness. But we are talking about inconsistency. That is, in file system there will be redundancy and there will be inconsistency. So duplication of data is redundancy. I have already explained what, that okay, this information, roll number, name, branch, course is duplicated, is available in the student file, and the same information is also duplicated in the result file. Same information is also duplicated in the result file. Now, what do I mean? So let's see duplication. So it is wastage of storage space, simply. So storage space, you may say, sir, nowadays very large size disks or devices are available, so storage should not be a big problem, but consistency will still remain a problem, right? So redundancy is one thing, but this inconsistency also comes because of redundancy only. Inconsistency comes because of redundancy only. That's what you need to understand, that we can overcome the problem of redundancy by assuming that we have sufficient or large amount of storage space available to us, but this consistency must be there. I mean, the most basic thing which you will require from the database, it is that it should be correct. If the wrong information is given to you, then there is no point of retrieving the data from the database. You can simply imagine a value and you can write it. Okay, you want marks, his marks are 60. If anyway, if you are going to access the data from the database, at the place of 70, if you are receiving the value 55, then do whatever you want. You can write it by yourself. Why access the database? For that particular reason. So what are you trying to say? I am trying to say that this will, look at this, look at this field. Which field? Marks. Look at this field, marks. This marks field is available in the student file, as well as this field is available in the result file. So if at all somebody changes the marks in the result file, so initially the marks for student 10 are 50 in the student table, and the marks for student 10 are 50 in the result table as well. But if somebody makes some changes in the result file, that okay, the marks, or he has eventually applied for re-evaluation and you came to know that okay, marks for student 10 are now 60, but that information is updated only in the result file. So if somebody tries to access the marks of student S10 from the student file, then he is still going to get this 50 marks with respect to student S10. Yes or no? So this is duplication is one thing, but if you do not tackle the redundancy in a proper way, then this redundancy may also cause inconsistency. Got it? So that's another problem with the file system, because there is no centralized view. So let's try to understand, sir, what's the difference between file system and database management system in this regard, right? So in file system, every file is seen individually. In file system, every file is seen individually, whereas in database management system, the complete database is seen. The complete database is seen as a centralized database. So everything will be related to each other. Now you will not have duplication of data. You will not have duplication of data in the database management system, and to avoid the duplication of data, we will use the concept of normalization. So that's a very important chapter of database management system. We call it normalization. So duplication of data is redundancy. Inconsistency may be present because of redundancy. So the primary reason for this inconsistency is redundancy in terms of database. Otherwise, modification, because of modification, there may be other changes which we will see when we will try to understand the concept of normalization only, but there will be other things. So because of redundancy. Now, how does database management system avoid this problem? DBMS avoid this problem with the help of normalization. We'll see all this thing, but we are just trying to understand that there are some problems in the normalization of database table. So what will happen? So until unless it is not needed, there will be no, so basically there will be no duplicate copy in a well-defined database. In a well-defined database, there will be no duplicate copies of data, right? Information may be duplicate, but same data will not be duplicated. Information may be duplicated is a term which you may not understand at this point of time, but just try to understand. Let me give you an intuition that what am I trying to say. I'm just trying to say that, okay, in this file, we'll have a common file. That student file will consist only the information which are related to the student. Course file will consist of information which are only related to the course. Result file will only consist the information which are related to the result of the student. If some other information is needed, then that information will be stored in a separate file which will have the complete detail or a specific detail of the student. So you can create a new file in which you actually, if you want some other information, that okay, like you may actually say that student S1 is having name A. Here in result file, you will have S1, that okay, whose marks are they, but you will not write the information that what is the name, because the name of the student is already available in the specific table which is known as a student. Now the marks only, let's assume the marks of student S1 are 20, then those marks will be available, right? Now here in this course, so this, let's see, now this marks may be in the subject DBMS. This marks may be in the subject DBMS, right? So here also you will do what, sir? You will have the course C1. Let's assume the name of the course C1 is DBMS, right? Now here, rather than writing the DBMS, you will simply say C1. So wherever you see C1, you will eventually know that okay, these are the course 20. Here you are writing the course name as well as branch. You are writing the course name as well as branch. So you can only say one thing out of this two, that okay, for this particular branch, these are the marks, right? So that's the common idea which you need to understand, that you don't need to duplicate the data, and if there is any information which needs to be duplicated, right? See, let's try to understand. You actually need to know the information that student S1 has enrolled for a course. Let's say assume the course is C1. So student S1 has enrolled for course C1. So if you write the information of course C1, then wherever this information of C1 is used, this information will be repeated. this information will be repeated. So why it will be repeated? So let's see. Sir, student S1, the branch is computer science and course is C1. Then you will say, you know that S1 is of computer science branch only. So if S1 enrolls for any other course which is C2, then computer science has to be repeated. Then computer science has to be repeated. Are you getting the idea? So you will eventually say that for CS, there will be one course C1 which will be available in this course table, and S1 has registered for C1 as well as S1 has registered for C2. This information will be available in a separate table. S1 has enrolled for C1, S1 has enrolled for C2. This information can be stored in a separate table in which you can say that this is enrollment table. This is enrollment table, that which student has enrolled for which particular course. So this how somehow we'll understand that we cannot understand the normalization in a 15-minute discussion, but I'm just trying to give you the intuition that okay, the information is repeated in the file system, in database management system. When we do the normalization, we will try to ensure that information is not repeated in any of the database table. Information is not repeated in any of the database table, right? So this is the second thing. I hope you understand that redundancy will cause inconsistency, therefore we do not require redundancy. Now the third thing is number of disk access. Now another thing which is most important. So whenever we study any subject of computer science, there are two things which are most important. What, sir? The first thing which is most important is correctness, that the result should be correct, and another is time, that time required should be minimum. So why do we study all those algorithms, right? We study all those algorithms in order to understand that what is the time complexity, that which one will produce the result in something is not right. Hello? Is everything okay? Am I audible and visible to all of you? Am I audible and visible to all of you? Let's see. Hello? Oh, no. Things are working properly. Am I audible and visible to all of you? I just heard a sound and I guess my video is stuck. YouTube as well. I'm stuck. Tell me, am I audible and visible to all of you? Something is not right. Just a minute. Oh, thank God. I guess I'm back. Hello? 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 In my system, I can actually see that everything is okay now. Okay, everything is fine now, I guess. Let's see. Yes. Everything is fine now. So let's start then. Sorry guys, there was some issue with the pins which are connected to the camera and mic. Therefore, you may not have heard what I was trying to say. So we are just, the next thing is number of disk access. So what was I saying? That I was saying that, sir, the two most important thing when we discuss about anything related to computer system is that the execution of the program must be correct and it should take minimum amount of time. So if you have two algorithms which are producing the correct result, then you will eventually choose the one which is taking less amount of time. So let's see, if file system is also, let's assume there are some other complications as well, but let's assume if at all the file system is able to produce the correct output, everything is good, then you, and DBMS is also able to produce the correct result, then you will think in terms of time, that which one is taking less amount of time. Yes or no? So there comes number of disk access. So let's try to understand. There is a very large file. When I say the problem in the file system, then it's because of large database. So very large file. Let's assume somewhere around 1 terabyte. Jane do 1 terabyte. So there are many blocks in the disk. So basically these are the blocks. So this is block 0, block B1 of the disk, and this is some block BX of the disk, and this is some block BZ of the disk, and so on, right? So one block will consist of many information. So let's see. So this is the complete student file. So this is a very large file. This is again the file of a student. This is a very large file, but this is a file of a student. So in this file, all the data are corresponding to the student. Now, what did I say? Database will be stored in the disk. How did we divide the disk? Disk is divided into form of blocks. So there will be many blocks. Now, one file will be stored in multiple blocks. One file will be stored in multiple blocks. To store one large file, you will require multiple blocks of the disk. Now, the data will be same. So here also you will have the information of SID in this block X as well. You will have the information of name. Somewhere you will have the information of marks and so on. So if I ask you that retrieve the SID of the student, just try to understand. Retrieve the marks of the student with SID. Retrieve marks of a student with SID equals to SX. If I am looking for the, then I mean it's not necessary that that particular mark will be in block BX, SID SX will be in block BX, don't think so. But if I am saying retrieve the marks of a student with SID equals to SX, now you need to check where exactly this SID equals to SX is present in the file. Yes or no? You need to check where exactly this SID equals to SX is present in this file. Now what will happen? Sir, this is our calculation that check SID equals to SX or not. Where exactly this comparison will be performed? So this comparison will be performed in the main memory. This comparison will be performed in the main memory, and these are the blocks of the disk. Now, what is the unit of transfer? What is the unit of transfer between main memory and secondary memory? At a time, one block will be transferred between secondary memory to main memory. So first you will transfer block B0 from secondary memory to main memory. You will check whether SID equals to SX is present in this block or not. Then you will check the second block. If it is not present in B0, then you will transfer the second block from secondary memory to main memory. Then you will check whether SID equals to SX is present in this block or not. So in the worst case, you may have to go up to the last block of the file. you may have to go up to the last block of the file, and each block transfer between secondary memory and main memory will require some time. Each block transfer between main memory and secondary memory will require some time. So number of disk access are more. Number of disk access are more in file system. What's the idea? In worst case, you may have to transfer all the blocks of the file. Yes or no? In worst case, we may have to transfer all blocks of file from secondary memory to main memory. That's okay. So that's fine. So what happens if this is not a file, but if it is being maintained by the database management system? Then database management system will use the concept of indexing. Database management system will use the concept of indexing, that there will be a index table. This index table will be present in database management system. So using index table, it will check that whether this information is present in this block or not, this will present in this block or not. So similarly, I mean, how index are maintained is a different thing, but I hope you know that indexing will be used to point to a particular location where your desired information may be present. So by accessing this index table, which is comparatively of a small size compared to this file, you will access this index table, and from this index table you will get the address of a block in which your SID SX may be present. So after getting the information that if at all the SID equals to SX is present in the file, then if it is present in the database, then it will be present into this block of the secondary memory. Then you will transfer only this block from the secondary memory to main memory, and you will check the data in this particular block. If the information is present in this block, then this search is successful. If the information is not present in this block, then you know that the information corresponding to SID equals to SX cannot be present in any other block apart from this. That means that the information about SID equals to SX is not present in this file at all. Clear? Eh? Information of the SID equals to SX is not present in this file at all. So it will reduce the number of disk access. Who will reduce the number of disk access? DBMS will reduce the number of disk access using the concept of index file or index table, indexing basically, right? So that's another benefit. Now, apart from that, the last thing which we discussed is concurrent accessing. So sir, there is a file student. There is a file student. Now what happens? So there are two users. User U1 and user U2. User U1 access the record of S5, student S5, and user U2 access record of S10. What will happen in the file system? Sir, just to make sure that just to ensure the consistency at the file system level, not completely, not because of redundancy, but if I assume that the redundancy is not present because of consistency is not being violated because of redundancy, then are there any another reasons because of which consistency may be violated? Yes sir. So the idea is, if two users access the same file in the file system, then it is not allowed. Why? So U1 and U2 cannot execute concurrently. U1 and U2 cannot execute concurrently, or why? Or cannot access the information concurrently. Why? Because, anybody knows the answer? Because in file system, locking is at file level. What does it mean? If any user, if a user U1 want to access the record of student as student file, if user U1 want to access a record of student file, then it will log the complete file. It will log the complete file. User U1 is interested only in the record of student S5. User U2 is interested in the record of student S10. They are trying to access the different records, but those record belongs to the same file. So if U1 starts accessing, so let's assume this is user U1, this is user U2, then user, before accessing the record of student S1, it will lock the student.txt file. It will lock your student.txt file, and then it will do whatever it wants to do. When user U1 has already logged the student file, if user U2 try to acquire the lock on student.txt file, because this file is already logged by user U1, therefore this will be denied. This lock will not be granted to user U2 if it is already granted to user U1. So until user U1 unlock this file, up till that point user U2 cannot access. Up to this point user U2 cannot access the student.txt file. It means user U2 can student another record of the student file only after the unlocking by user U1. But this is not the problem. So what's the idea? So concurrent accessing. So if two users want to access if these two users want to access the same record, if both of them want to access the same record, that is record of student S15, then it is a problem. It is a problem because if two different users are trying to modify the same record, then there may be a possibility of inconsistency. So if both of them are trying to, should not be allowed. Should not be allowed. If two users are trying to access the same record, then they should not be allowed, because if user U1 updates first and U2 updates afterward, then U1 may eventually think that okay, the final value in the database is what I have updated, and U2 will think that final value is what I have updated. But ultimately, the final value in the database will be by the final user, whosoever updated in the database. But it should be known to the other user as well that the final value which is present in the database at this point of time is what, right? So if user U1 update and afterward user U2 update the information of student S15, then the information with respect to user U1 will become inconsistent. Yes or no? So that's the idea, that okay, this should not happen. So the solution for this is that in DBMS, this engine works in a different manner. So in DBMS, locking is at record level. Locking is at record level. What does it mean? Here, user U1 will not log the student.txt, but it will only log the record of student S1, and it will try to log the record of student S2. Now, it has logged the record of student S1, it is trying to log the record of student S2, then this will also be granted because no other user has logged the record of student S2. So, these two users U1 and U2 can execute concurrently if the record is at the if the lock is at the record level. But if the lock is at the file level, then two users will not be able to operate on the same file concurrently. Therefore, concurrent accessing will not be allowed. So, concurrent accessing is not allowed. This is the limitation in file system, or limited concurrent access, I would say. I'm just writing it just to explain the concept. Otherwise, two readers may be allowed to access the file concurrently, but one reader and one writer will not be allowed to access. Therefore, I'm saying is not allowed. So concurrent accessing is not allowed, or I would say limited. Not allowed or limited in file system, whereas there will be more concurrency using the database management system. So these are the basic main problems in the file system, because of which we move to the database management system. So there are other limitations as well. Sharing of data, like I said, in file system the information are distributed. That is, one is the student file, so that is only student file. One is the course file, only course file. One is mark result file, so that is only the result file. So this sharing of data is not possible. Sharing of data is not up to that level in the file system, whereas in the database management system there is a central database. Therefore you can share all the data with all the users, right? Security and protection, as I told you, security, because the complete information about the complete physical details of the file should be given to the user. Therefore the security and protection becomes a problem. Recovery, so in database management system, if a transaction fails or a database fails, then there are aspects of recovering the database, whereas in file system there is no such aspect at that particular level, and there are many more other limitations of file system, because of which we eventually move to the database management system. Now there are some benefits of file system as well, but those benefits are not up to that level that it can override the benefits of database management system. Therefore, whenever the database is too large, we eventually use the concept of database management system. So this is why we use database management system. So the discussion that why do we need database management system is from here, that there are various limitations of file system, and to overcome those limitations we use the concept of database management system. So this is it. Thank you very much. So this is the timing of these sessions which are being conducted on the application. So these are free app classes for discrete mathematics. Today I have started with the terminologies of propositional logic. Tomorrow we will discuss tautological implication, equivalence between the propositional function, and we'll discuss the rules of inference in the tomorrow's session. Right. So if you guys are interested in learning the concept of mathematical logic, then register at the application and mark your calendar for this dates and time 9 AM, so that you can understand the concept of mathematical logic. So that will be all for this session. Thank you very much. If you like the session, then hit the like button. If you are new to the channel, then subscribe the channel and press the bell icon to get the notification about our upcoming videos. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow at the same time for database management system, and at 9 AM at the application for mathematical logic. Good night. Take care. Sweet dreams.